right, so you guys know that we are paired up with flatbooks.com, and we just want to take some time to remind you that if you're looking for practical, flexible resources for your music classroom, you've got to head over to flatbooks.com, that's flat-books.com, and check out all of their innovative ebooks and lesson plans that can be used in your classroom today. It's so cool. You download them right to your computer, and you can start using them immediately. And just for listening to the podcast, if you use the code Musicast20, that's MUSICAST20 at checkout, you'll receive 20% off your entire purchase.
All right, everyone. Thank you for coming in for another episode on Musicast. Today or tonight, whenever this might be, we have with us Mr. Scott Sheehan. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
And Scott, one of the things that we kind of feel like is best, rather than read down a bio, since we have you here, you seem to be the person that would hopefully know you best to speak of you. So if you wouldn't mind, could you give us a little bit of a rundown of your background musically and professionally?
Sure. So right now I am the band director, music department chair at Hollidaysburg area senior high school, which is in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania, sort of center of the state, not too far from Penn State University. And I am also the president-elect for NAFME, for the National Association for Music Education. And that term just began in June, and I will assume presidency in June of 2022. So it's a 6-year commitment for that endeavor. It's 2 years as president-elect, 2 years as president, and then 2 years as past president, or as immediate past president. Along with those things, I'm very active with PMEA and have on numerous committees and different work with PMEA. I'm a past state president for PMEA, and I'm also an educational clinician for Conselmer.
Awesome.
And if you want to know a little bit more, I don't know how deep you want to go into things that I've done in the past, or teaching positions, things like that. I did teach at Bald Eagle Area High School, which is a rural school district outside of State College, Pennsylvania. I was there for 8 years, and I'm now starting year 16 at Hollidaysburg, so 24 years altogether.
Awesome. Did you grow up in the state of PA, or are you from out of state and then came this way and never left us?
No, I'm from Central Pennsylvania. I grew up in a small town called Cresson, which is kind of close to Johnstown, Altoona area. Not actually about a half an hour from Hollidaysburg. So my parents are still there. Still have a lot of family in the area.
Awesome. So depending on who's listening and how much they know about the different positions that you mentioned, anything president-elect, president, past president, anything like that comes with a certain amount of responsibility and things like that. And I think that people listening would also say that high school directing also comes with a certain level of responsibility. So what does that look like on a daily basis for you? I can't imagine the ratio leans towards sleep, but...
Actually, I'm very good about shutting off somewhere between 9 and 10 o'clock in the evening. Like I'm done. I turn the computer off. If I'm playing on my phone, I'm playing Candy Crush or something, I've got to have that unwind time. I really do. So I do put in very full days, and I have an incredibly supportive family. I have got to put that up front. My wife and my daughter are huge supporters and very, very, very understanding of everything. And the days, especially right now with COVID, are very full and tiring. To be honest with you, I'm pretty exhausted by the time you get through a school day, and we're in a hybrid setting. So half of the students, we have an A-B cohorts, and so half of the students are there Monday, Wednesday, the other half Tuesday, Thursday, Friday's flip. And of course, with ensembles and things like that, it's by alphabet. So you get who you get in your room. And so there's a lot of online component for the students that aren't in our rooms. It's not synchronous. So it's not like I'm rehearsing the wind ensemble live and then the kids are tuning in. It's a separate series of assignments and online work that they're doing through Google Classroom. We're a Google school. And So it's a lot. Days are very busy between teaching the students that are in there, and along with the masks and the social distancing and all the protocols that go along with the pandemic. It's also keeping up with the Google Classroom assignments, grading all that. So in some ways, it almost feels like double work. It's probably not quite double, but it's a lot of extra work, a lot of extra planning. And then on top of that, with my current NAFME position, I've got meetings, 2-3 nights a week, lots of weekends. Yesterday, I was on an 8-hour meeting. So it's a lot of time, but I don't mind it. I'm kind of that nerd guy that really looks forward to meetings, and because I love to connect with people. When you guys reached out, I was excited because I love to hear what other people are doing, see how we can help, how we can connect. I always look at myself sort of as a connector, a bridge builder. If I know somebody that can help you in a certain project, I'm going to connect you to those people. So that's a lot of what I enjoy it. So it's not necessarily work, but I'm tired at the end of the day for sure.
Was that enjoyment of bridge building and things like that, was that what led you to the interest in serving on any kind of board or in an office in that position, or was there something else that led you to those spots?
Well, I was a very young teacher when I got involved with PMEA. I was a third-year teacher, and somebody said, "Hey, we're looking for someone to run for a district president." For those that aren't from Pennsylvania, there's 12 districts. And I said, "Really?" And the person that called me didn't even really know me. And he said, "Yeah, we just, people have been talking about the good work you're doing at your school, and we just see something in you we think would be valuable for PMEA." And I was like, "Well, okay." And I talked it over with my wife, and she said, "Go for it." And, so it's been many, many terms of various offices, but I was very young, and I guess I was one of those people who may have been identified. It's obviously awkward to talk about yourself on things, but, I think that one of the things about me that may be a little unique is that I'm responsive. People ask me to do something, I'm going to follow through to the best of my ability, 100%. And I've always been that way in my day jobs and as a band director, as a music educator. I try to give my 100% to the students always. That way with parents, when parents have questions or they want to know what's going on, I really push hard to be a good communicator and just be responsive. And I think that's sort of what folks may have seen way back then. As I said, I was a pretty young teacher, and to get involved in that way. And I think what has kept me involved has been the connections to make with other people and building those bridges and just meeting other people. When I was the NAFME Eastern Division president, I had the really good fortune of traveling to 13 states in New England and down to Maryland. So from Maine to Maryland, and then Europe has a MEA, believe it or not. And I got to go to Europe, to Germany, to their conference, and you just learn that, it's not like one state's better than another, or one MEA or one music teacher has it all figured out, and they're the best. And it's not like that at all. You see so many people who are so passionate about music education and what they're doing for their students. And for me, it was just like one idea after another, that you would see so many great things happening. For instance, Vermont, very small state, not a whole lot of members in their MEA, but they have a absolutely phenomenal composition program for their students where they match them up with a mentor composer. And there's literally hundreds of students that are composing music, and it's sort of a contest, but not really. It's more of a process of getting kids involved with composition. And I would have never known that as a music teacher, without having been involved with NAFME and PMEA. So, it's those kinds of things of figuring out, wow, there's a lot of great things happening everywhere, even though, sometimes you look out, especially right now with the pandemic, and you think, oh, things are rough, things are tough, we're losing teachers, we're losing jobs, or programs are losing kids. I know that's been an issue. I've been hearing that a lot as I've been traveling and talking I haven't really been traveling through Zoom. But as I've been hearing things from different parts of the country that, people are concerned that programs are diminishing, whether that's numbers and students or whether that's budget, whether that's staffing. And it's scary. but at the same time, there's equally or more great things happening even through the pandemic. So it's that's very encouraging to me, and I'm definitely a cup half full kind of guy. Not that we don't have to tackle our problems and identify them and go head on, but as much as we can do to stay positive through these difficult times, I think is important. And I'll finish this thought. Sorry, it went all over.
You're fine.
But I'll finish this thought with saying, I think one of the strengths of all of this right now through the pandemic is that how much innovation has happened, how many music teachers across the country have put out resources and put so many great things to help each other, just really, truly in the spirit of trying to help one another figure it out. And if what I'm doing can help you, great. And I've seen that all over the country. And you look on NAFME's resource page for the virtual resources for music teachers here on our COVID pages. And pretty much every state and so many other associations have these resources, and so many of them are free. I'm seeing so much sharing, and that's really encouraging too. So we are a music education nation, and we're not in it alone.
Do you think that a glass half full kind of idea? Do you think that you've watched these statewide or these national things have not just been resources for teachers, but have they flourished almost in light of where we're at and needing to look for different places for resources and how to teach?
I would say so. I mean, generally speaking, across the board, yes. Are there people who are resistant? Absolutely. Are there people who are still struggling? I think a huge takeaway for me has been this pandemic is not the only pandemic that we are facing right now as a music education profession or as a country. The issues of social justice have been, amplified tremendously right now, as well as the divide of socioeconomic divide in our country. And I see that play out. And there are many, many, many students and teachers who have very little resource, no internet, no music education right now because they're not in school and their schools are closed down for quarantine and so on and so forth. And their teachers just simply aren't allowed to teach music right now. And the divide is scary to me, so there is a negative side to this, just to be upfront and to be honest, that, there's an amplification, as I said earlier, of the haves and have-nots right now. And I think we that have, I feel very, very fortunate and blessed to be where I'm at right now. And we that have need to really do what we can to help out those that don't. And even if it's just lending an encouraging ear and support in a sort of friendly way, not maybe I can't write a check for $100,000 or something like that, but at the same way, if we can just be there to listen and to support one another, that's huge. Especially when you were talking about the homework app and the digital divide that's happening. When you get to the social justice angle, that's a whole nother topic that I can touch on a little bit if you want me to, but I think I'll leave it to get back to the positive. I do think that in terms of the technology that has come about to the free resources I mentioned earlier, so many people are taking advantage, and students really are benefiting. I think on the other side of this pandemic, obviously music teachers want to get ensembles back and having ensembles in a traditional setting, band, choir, orchestra, that sort of ensemble, the kids miss that, teachers miss that, directors miss that. And I think that will come back, and the appreciation for that and the gratitude for those experiences. And I know some folks who are just now starting back. I had my first jazz rehearsal last Friday with the whole group, and it was like magic. And the kids were smiling the whole time, and it didn't matter what they sounded like, and they did sound great. But it was just that gratitude of being back and making music together. And I think folks, on the other side of this pandemic, and as we work through, we're going to be better off for that. But at the same time, I think that the technology and all that we're learning through this pandemic and all these opportunities that, I myself as a high school teacher, teach music theory, teach guitar, these things like, wow, there are things that we can be more efficient at and more effective at. And so I do think that on the other side of the pandemic, there are going to be some great resources that stick, and even processes in the way we do things that'll stick. There's been a big push from NAFME and from other associations and from just music teachers in general to say, we talk about create, perform, respond, and connect as our big core standards for music education. Well, the perform standard for ensembles is what everybody knows, and we're familiar and we're comfortable with that. But now's an opportunity to really dig into responding and to creating and into connecting. And I've seen a lot of folks doing some really cool stuff, and I really believe that that's going to stay. And hopefully, as we continue to work on the digital divide and some of these other challenges, that will also, we can get those opportunities for those students as well. I know NAFME is working very hard with our lobbyists and some of our campaigns to really make sure that we're bringing that to light and to do all that we can to encourage the federal government at the national level to help fund those projects and those bills that will get money into those to shrink that gap.
Marissa, I'll stop after this and you can go ahead and tag over.
Please.
I so agree with the whole idea of the resistance to do anything technologically, because it's I've been in the meetings and I've experienced the whole, music is ensembles and that's what it is, and that's the special of it. And the more we move away from it, there's danger in it and all these things. And I know that people feel that way in this moment where we have to look at the other elements of standards. If you had conversations with those teachers that are resistant to moving away from perform, what would you say to them as words of encouragement, or just kind of like an easy jumping off point to try this?
Well, I think about, I have two thoughts, and they're kind of equal in my mind. I was on another webinar with a friend in Nebraska here a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about this exact thing, because there is a resistance out there. Teaching band over Zoom isn't band, right? And we get that, and we need to acknowledge that. But here are my two thoughts on that. The first thing is focus on what you can do. So many people are literally in a stage of grieving because they have lost they've lost part of their identity. Music, especially music teachers, and I'm going to say this as a band director, I think a lot of band directors, more than anything, feel this loss of their identity, and there's a grieving process that people are going through. And so I do think they tend to focus on what they can't do or what isn't the same and all of those things. And so for my first piece of advice, and I really think this is important, is to look at what you can do. And maybe that can do is working one-on-one with kids, or two-on-one in smaller groups, and more of a lesson thing, and looking to build those students' technique. And have the hope, as you're focusing on what you can do, don't lose sight of the fact that we are going to get to the other side of this. We are going to this is temporary. And when we get to the other side of this pandemic, we want those kids to still have the technique to be able to play and to be able to perform or sing. They need to have that. And if you're talking about young students, the steady beat and rhythm exercises, and there's a lot of things that can work even from a performing aspect through Zoom or through an whatever platform you're using. The other piece of this that I think is equally important is focusing in on the why. Why did we as music educators choose this profession? What got us fired up about music in the first place? And I'm going to think that for a lot of folks, that was performing. It happened in an ensemble, that happened while you were singing, while you're playing your instrument, and that spark went off. And I know I'm not going to get into it just because of time, but I know the exact day I wanted to be a music teacher. I know exactly the whole story of that whole day of when it hit me. And it was this amazing ecstatic experience that happened in a rehearsal, in an ensemble. I was playing my trumpet, and wow, that huge wow moment that I knew I needed to do this for the rest of my life. And I think so many of us have that. It's the music that draws us in. And so as we're trying to navigate these crazy waters through digital platforms, how can we share those moments with our students? How can we give them those wow moments? And will it be the same as playing an ensemble? No. But if we don't lose sight of our why and why we got into this in the first place, I think that is what can help us get through. That can help propel us, realizing this is temporary, realizing there's a ton of resources out there, and sometimes it's overwhelming and we've got to pick and choose and just give me one thing. Don't give me 30 things. I just need one thing that I can do tomorrow to help to connect my kids. And that kind of leads us, the why gets us back to the point of connection. It's the music that we connect with, and perhaps it's, the composer and the literal sheet music that you're performing, note to note, chord to chord, phrase to phrase, right? And it's the people that we connect with. And so I think more than anything, to focus on the connections, focus on what we can do and focus on the connections with our students, with parents. I think I would not lose sight of making sure parents know what's going on. I'm not trying to name drop a lot, but Scott Lang has a lot of great resources out there about connecting with parents. They're free. It's all out there. Again, I'm not getting any kickbacks from any of this, but I'm just saying there's a lot of great resources about connecting with parents, and also administrators. We need those connections to happen more than ever. And you want to call it advocacy, sure. I think that connecting with people is advocacy. We build relationships, and that's how I define advocacy, as the art of building relationships. And so however we can do that through music, I think can be very, very powerful, even during the pandemic. So, and if folks listening to the call are like really frustrated, I'll put my email out there. They can shoot me an email or give me a call for real, because, sometimes we just have to talk each other off the ledge. There are days where it's tough. So, we're all in it together.
I have weirdly felt this year, I'm a high school band director also, and I have weirdly felt never on the same level as my students than I have this year, where I think I can see it in them that, this is the closest marching band right now, and we're fortunate to have a little bit more structure with our marching band in all of this, and it's the closest thing to normal they have right now, and they're super appreciative of that, and I can see it in their eyes when it's not 100% the same, but then my staff and I try and pull them out of it, and then we have days where they do something and they just sound awesome, and I have that moment where they can tell that I just get mad that it's not normal, and they pull me out of the same, and there's just this acceptance that they know that it's not the same and it's not going to be the same, and every party can acknowledge it at different points and move past, and it's hard. It's not a great feeling when you're in that moment, but to be able to pull each other out is huge, I think.
Absolutely. And realizing that it's nobody's fault. I had a really hard time at the beginning of the pandemic personally. Let's face it, we're event planners, right? Music teachers are event planners. It's the next concert, it's the next rehearsal, it's the next festival, it's the next whatever. We're event plan trips, fundraisers, whatever it is, we're event planners. And at the beginning of and I thrive on that. I told you I'm kind of nerdy. I like meetings, right? I like to do things, and I'm very social. And as things were like getting canceled, and then I was realizing, hey, this is it, like no concerts and no parades and no trips, and it was like one by one by one by one, and I was not okay. I was really struggling personally with all of this, and I don't know why or how, just kind of like I had this day where it just kind of clicked, and one of my colleagues actually called me and, how you doing? And I said, not very good. And she said, well, Scott, we're all in this together. It's the same for everybody. It's not just Hollidaysburg. It's the whole country. Nobody's making music right now. Nobody has these experiences. And I don't know why, but it kind of made me feel a little better that it wasn't me. I guess, we kind of have our own expectation of ourselves, to really push and do our best every day. And I felt like I was like letting my students down or myself down or letting people down that this was in a different way. And it took a while to come around. So, kind of back to that advice that you were mentioning for people who are still struggling, it takes a while to come around to embrace the reality we're in today and then build toward what we want it to be in the future. And maybe there's things that we can let go of, in the past. I love the fact that there were no statewide testing this past spring. The relief for kids was huge, and maybe that doesn't need to come back in the way that it did before. There's lots of things in our school systems, not just music, that I think we have an opportunity to really reimagine it and think about doing things in a different way.
I think that's one of the things that we've experienced as well. I'm Kevin's high school colleague, so I teach orchestra, and same experience as you. I was really struggling at the beginning. I'm a control freak, so the fact that I couldn't fix this, like when something goes wrong at school, I know I have control over it. I can fix it, and I was struggling with the fact that I couldn't fix this. And however, to kind of parallel what you mentioned earlier, the first week we were back, we're in a hybrid model as well. The first week we were back this year and teaching was one of my favorite weeks of teaching of my career so far. And I know people think I'm bonkers for saying that because it was hard and we've got kids on Zoom and in class and it was not easy. But it was, for the first time ever, it was not, well, why didn't you practice over the summer? We have a concert in 2 months and, you know, we have to go. It was, all right, we're going to stop. We're going to pause. We're going to enjoy being back in the same classroom. We're going to go over these theory concepts that some of you need to review or, you know, and Kevin and I have had a lot of conversations about, okay, we can't do this. Let's not try to even parallel that. Let's do something completely new, completely different. Let's take this almost as an opportunity. And I think that's been just a breath of fresh air, frankly.
And, you know, I agree 100% with everything you said. We do have this chance, you know, this pause. I kind of think of it as a pause in our normal rat race of event to event to event, to really think about it. And the other thing I'd add to that is ask the kids. The kids have so many creative ideas. The first thing that I did when I found out we weren't coming back at all in the spring was did a survey with the students and said, what do you want to do? Like, and I gave them lots of choices and lots of, you know, but I think they value the fact that they can have input into the decision making about where things are going. And I know a lot of teachers do that anyway with their programs. But right now, especially, it's like you said, it's kind of freeing. It's, you know, sort of, there's no rules anymore, right? If we're not up to the concert, you know, if it's not, you know, sight read and refine, you know, we have that chance to really do that and to hear their voice, to get the students' input has been really helpful to me personally, you know, as I've been going through and getting this year going.
Yeah, absolutely. I started my year with composition for the first time ever. You know, one of my groups arranged the piece that they were going to play. It wasn't, here it is. It was, well, what do you want to do? That doesn't exist. Let's make it exist. And then let's go from there. It's been fun, I think.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think to that point, I know that to some extent we're all still kind of, this is great. I learned this new thing. I can do this. I don't know what 3 weeks from now looks like, but this is great right now. And I think some of the most interesting conversations are going to come from 2 years from now, once the dust settles and everyone can kind of like rebound and then ask the question of, all right, so what am I keeping from this? And what am I, thank goodness this is coming back. And then I think those conferences and those statewide things or national things to be able to say, this is what my program looks like post this massive pause. I think the most interesting stuff might come from that for sure.
Yeah, one thing, this is a personal philosophy as well as, you know, there's a lot of books and a lot of professionals out there, but the idea of being culturally responsive is huge, you know, and I think right now gives us a huge opportunity to really look at the students. Where are they? What are their interests? Everybody, and I believe personally, it's my opinion, everybody loves music. Everybody listens to music. Music is part of every culture, every society since the dawn of civilization. So therefore, music is part of who we are, but we don't always allow the students' voice of how they view music into our rooms. And I think right now during this pandemic, we have a chance to really do that. And sounds like, Marissa, you were right on the idea there, you know, of what do you want to do? Great, let's make it happen. And they have that chance to do that. And so this idea of really listening to the students and really knowing who they are and where they're coming from. And sometimes it's very diverse. And some, you know, folks often say, well, you know, my school district isn't that diverse or there's not diversity. Guess what? There is. There's a lot of diversity. That could be abilities. That could be socioeconomic diversities. You know, there's so much diversity. It just doesn't mean the color of our skin. And as I said, can get into some of the social justice work that NAFME is doing and some of the discussions that have been happening at a national level. If I wanted to boil it down to, like, what does it mean for a teacher in a classroom, music classroom? I think it's, see where the students are at and really listen. And then how can we together facilitate and work together with the students in mind to bring them to a higher level of understanding music education. It doesn't just necessarily mean, for those of us in the band world, that it's Granger and Holst and Vaughan Williams, and the great masters. There's a lot of great music out there that's being written by lots of different folks today from a huge diverse background, and it's much more accessible than it's ever been. And also by the students. I love the idea that they could arrange something for them, and think of the meaning that that's going to have for them. Those kids will always remember that experience and take that with them forever, that, hey, we got to do this and then we performed it and here it is. And maybe in this world it's digital and it's out there, somehow, and all that kind of thing, that it's out there forever. This isn't a one and done replication of the greatest hits of Vaughan Williams or whatever, that they have a real chance to connect much deeper than they may have in other ways.
I'm just gonna, before you ask your next question, plug that if you're listening to this episode, and this is either your first episode or whatever, we talk about this at length with Wanda Vasquez Garcia. So if you go back in our episodes, she talks about cultural diversity and asking the students what they want to do. So you can get a whole look into that world on that episode as well.
I was just going to say, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that, and I think the one other thing to kind of, and we mentioned this a little bit with Wanda when we spoke to her as well, to keep going with that point, is this is new territory for educators just as much as it is for students, and it's really I love these ideas, and they're massive ideas to put into our classrooms. But I think the other thing we also have to be prepared for is that it's going to feel different, and sometimes different can be construed as not good or less control, and that just kind of accepting that you have to work in that unknown territory is becoming more and more important. As you say, like when I take Granger and I take Reed and I take Hulse and I take them off the table, that's my safety net, for a lack of a better way of saying it. And you have to just be ready to embrace it works and it doesn't work sometimes.
Well, and whether it's from choosing repertoire or instructional strategies or just whatever process you're looking at as a teacher in an education system right now, I think the phrase that I've heard over and over again is, we just need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's so true, because every day, literally every day, is almost a new adventure. I don't know about you with your marching band. We're fortunate to have our marching band as an after-school outdoor-only activity, socially distanced, all those things. But boy, it's wonderful to be back. But, literally, we don't know if we're playing at a game on Friday. We don't know if the parade is going to happen. And there's just literally day by day, things are changing. And that's hard for us event planners, and it's hard when we're trying to communicate the plan to our families, our students' families and all of that, and trying to make sure schedules are still out there. And I really try to embrace the idea of being comfortable, being uncomfortable. It's kind of where we're at.
And to that point, I do have to say that, at least from my perspective, I've had such phenomenal administrative and parental support, because I think there's just this wide, like you said, there's this wide acknowledgement of things aren't the same, and any experience right now is massive for the students that we have. And to go along with that, I was just wondering, like, when you're having these moments that you're engaging the students more, do you ever use those opportunities to try and expand your advocacy in your Hollidaysburg community? Like, are you showing the rest of the non-music community what you're doing and the opportunities you're allowing your students?
To some degree. I'm thinking about, now you got me thinking about things I could be doing. So thanks, Kevin.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's all good. But I think that the way I've always looked at advocacy is the first step, and obviously I told you it's about relationship building. And I think the first step is always the students. If your program is centered around the students and their experiences, that's advocacy, because they're going to have a great time. They're going to keep coming back, and they're going to tell people, they're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their peers, they're going to tell their parents. And so then when you do need support for something, maybe it's fundraising, maybe it's a trip, maybe it's, chaperoning, whatever, parents are going to jump in because they know and they trust, and that's huge with this, that they trust that you're giving their children a great experience. And so I think that's where it all starts from. And so the things that we are doing now, to get to your point, the things that we are doing now, I think that the students, we have made opportunities to make sure the students are aware. We've been very limited on capacities, of who can be at events. And so at the end of our band camp time, we usually do a huge parent preview night and have everybody there, and we could only invite senior parents. And then the next opportunity we had to perform was before the first home football game, and it was at 5:00. Not normally, we weren't allowed in the stadium when the teams were there and all that because of the limits, but we invited junior parents. So, and then the sophomore parents were the next time, and they were very excited. And now I think the limits are changing a little bit. And again, things change every day. The rules keep changing. But I have tried to make sure, at least through the marching band, that we're sharing what we're doing in that way. And then I think there's like small things too, the small victories. Last Friday, we talked about the jazz band rehearsal earlier that day. One of the cohorts for concert band was only 12 musicians. And I'll be honest, it's been a little challenging trying to make music and have those kids feel connected. But Friday, it clicked. And they knew it, and I knew it. And, the music wasn't something horribly difficult or, super hard or anything like that. It was a hybrid or one of those flex arrangements that are out there, which I've been trying to capitalize on. And but boy, all 5 parts that were there were covered along with percussion, and they had to be independent. And I think that's been a scary thing for students, is them finding their own independence, because, hey, so-and-so that I used to rely on to always cover the part, and I was kind of that little softer voice in the background, isn't there, right? And so all of the kids, every one of them, all 12 of them, put forth the effort that they had to bring, and they shared their gift and that 100%. And at the end, when I cut them off, I had a huge smile because I knew what just happened, but they did too. And I guarantee you, back to that advocacy moment, I really hope, I shouldn't say guarantee, but I really hope that they went home and told their parents, man, concert band sounded great today. And there were only 12 of us, because I made a huge deal about that. I said, guys, this was it. This was the moment that I've been waiting for since school started with these crazy little cohorts. And I knew that we could get there. So, I think the advocacy just comes from any which way we can find it, but it's sharing the gifts and the joy and the excitement of music in any way we can. And, of course, then there's the administrative things, and that's where you got me thinking about, well, how can I pull this, and this together so administrators see it? And I think parents are seeing it. I definitely know through the marching band, parents are seeing it. I'm thinking about my choir colleagues, my orchestra colleagues, and my elementary colleagues. How can we make sure that folks are seeing it beyond just that's in the classroom, in the heat of the moment time. It's good thought, Kevin. Yeah, go ahead.
That was just one of the most comforting things I've heard all week. We've been having this conversation just about, the kids are more spread out. They can hear themselves now. They're not playing. Like that was wonderful. Thank you.
I can almost put my exact experience with one of my cohorts in that, and I've been having the same, like that small, like 10-person group it's an absolute struggle. And then on the flip side of it, the acoustics in our auditorium are in such a way that when I spread the kids out and they feel very exposed, my in the back students, the acoustics are so poor that they're a half beat behind. And just like, it was a mind-blowing 48 hours when I experienced the 12 students, and then I went to that and I thought, okay, big group, we can make a little more music, and then tempo-wise was out the window. So it's enlightening, to be sure.
Yeah.
So
I can't wait for that moment, though.
I'm excited. And then to the I love the marching. And I think the gateway right now is the sheer fact that it's outside, and to kind of tie it back to student ideas. We're not as fortunate right now we haven't had spectators at things quite yet and things like that. So we had a taping for competition just for people to see things, and I Zoomed the parents for them to see it, and immediately the kids took it to the nth degree, and they said, well, what if I tape my phone to my chest and I can do a snare drum cam, or I can do this and I can do a tuba cam, and you can pin the frame that you're in Zoom. So now the kids are like, when you look at it and you stack it, and I'm not trying to be pessimistic anyway, but when you look at it, you're not going to competition, you're not competing, you're not traveling, you're not in uniform. Like, those are a lot of things stacked, but to see the kids say, oh, but like I can do this and we can do this, and then I'll change my name to tuba and I'll change my name to drumline, and then all of a sudden the parents can choose who they want to follow. It's that tiny little moment of, all right, like if this is what gets them there, then this is that much cooler for them to do it.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea. I love that. And again, it's that can do. What can I do? Not what isn't the same as as it used to be. So yeah, I really like that. That's a great idea.
It was raining really bad on Saturday, so we didn't attempt it because I figured not a solid positive experience would be the phone bills to fix those. But next Saturday, maybe.
I'd like to pivot away from COVID and all of that just for a minute. We're actually running out of time too, but I figured while we have someone who's about to run our National Music Association, I'd ask this question: what is your kind of personal philosophy on music education? Why is it so important that this is in our schools and for all students, that it's an equitable experience? And the second kind of piece to that is, how can we continue to engage students beyond the ensembles? So the kids who didn't sign up for band in 4th grade or signed up and then quit, but now they're in high school, and we need to somehow serve them as well. That's a big question, a heavy question, but
yeah, sure.
I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some thoughts. So the why music is so important. I really truly believe that it's part of how people identify. It's part of our makeup. It's part of our DNA. As I said earlier, it's every culture since civilization began can identify music, and the innate, unique ways that it helps us express ourselves. And whether it's, some people like to think of it as, that aesthetic, emotional piece. And right now I'd say, amen. Absolutely. Social emotional learning is really important, and music is social and music is emotional. So I think we can hit the nail, and there's a lot of great resources out there that have come out really since COVID. In relation to that. And I think COVID, and I know you didn't want to talk specifically about COVID, but I think it's shown the light on what it is that we do and the why, so back to the why. I think, it shines the light on the fact that music is some way that we communicate. And it doesn't necessarily have to have just the lyrics to do it, right? We obviously have orchestral music and band music and guitar music and mariachi music and, so many different styles across the world. I mean, it's infinite. It's literally infinite beyond our measure of the way music impacts people. And I think that's the why. Why? Because we need to know how to tap into that to fulfill and have that full, rich life that human beings are meant to have. I think to deprive someone of music would be depriving them of oxygen. I mean, literally, I think it's from an educational standpoint, I think it's a right. It's in our ESSA language with the new laws. I think that it's meant to be there in the way that we would want students to know how to learn math and reading and science and all of those things. Music should be right there with all of those things, because it's one of the main ways that we learn. It's a mode of learning. So many people think of music as the noun. They think of music as the sheet, the printed notation on a piece of music. but we all know it's musicking, right? It's a verb, and and it's musical, and it's an adjective, and and I'm not trying to be cliche about this, but it's just so much. It's so encompassing to the fulfillment of the human experience. And without getting any deeper into that, I really feel that it's an obligation for every school district to tap into that, and make sure students are fulfilling that. And yes, there's correlations, and there's research out there about all the other benefits that music brings to folks, and the relationships, as far as the higher test scores and all that sort of stuff. And I don't want to go down that path, but I think it's how we identify ourselves. And I really believe, and if you look at Howard Gardner's research, the multiple intelligences, and as much as I learn when I'm little that, ouch, that's hot, when I touch the stove or touch the hot pot or something like that, or as much as I learn from somebody, telling me something in that interpersonal, those types of learnings, there's musical learnings. And when you look at that, and melodies, and how melodies connect, and the way phrasing works, and the way that the whole expressional piece works, that's why music. We need to learn that as humans. And right now, our society needs music more than ever. I mean, it's right now, I feel our world is so divisive. And we need that harmony. And I know that's a little, punny there, but we need to bring more harmony right now, more than ever, into societies. And I really believe that if you looked at schools that have music programs where kids are thriving and it's culturally relevant to them and so on, I would really be surprised if they weren't a more harmonious school, if they weren't, having better attendance and less discipline problems, and good academic record. I mean, that's out there. That type of research is out there. And so I think that's the big, broad picture of the why. I mean, I can get to the ways that we as music teachers connect with kids, and why I do what I do, because that's a whole nother story. I've seen music save children's lives. Without music, I know of students who would have taken their own life, or would have gone down a very, very, very dark path, maybe not with the intention of taking their own life, but would have been mixed up in trouble that may have had that happen. So, I know that the impact that we as music teachers have on kids is insurmountable. And the fact that a kid feels connected to something larger than themselves is also maybe equally important to what music itself can do for all of us. So that's kind of my thoughts on the first piece. And again, I could go on, but I'll move on to the second piece. And remind me real quick, that was in regard to the non-band choir orchestra, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, as I said, COVID has definitely brought a light to all of this. And I don't ever want to be on record as saying that band, choir, and orchestra aren't important, because they are very important.
Sure.
There's a tremendous tradition and a tremendous history there. But it's one history and it's one tradition. And obviously there's many composers and styles and, genres and all that sort of thing. But when you look at the traditional music education that most of us went through in our college years and going through it, that's sort of one lens or one way of looking at it. And when we try to expand and look, even within the United States, and then certainly in other countries, there are many, 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 many paths to music education. And what NAFME is really trying to do is to expand that and to make it more equitable for students, because in the traditional models of achievement, moving up through a program, there's lessons and there's a lot of barriers that either you have or you don't. You either have the means to get over those hurdles and over those barriers, and you can afford to do it, or you don't. And along with that is not just dollars and cents, but parental support, community support, administrative support. There's tons of hurdles to have that music program, to have that successful program in a traditional sense. I have seen, and I'm going to use this, and again, I'm not getting many money from these folks, but Little Kids Rock and the program that they are doing and the philosophy behind modern band is incredible. They're reaching out to kids in a culturally relevant way to say, here's the music, here's the vernacular music that you like. we're going to teach you some guitar or drums or something that you can do musically and to be connected to music. And it's a hook. It's a gateway in to, it's the gateway drug to music, right? It gives them a hook to get into something that's larger than themselves, in the same way that being part of a great marching band or a phenomenal symphony orchestra or that select choir that, sounds amazing. And that's just one way. Little Kids Rock obviously looks to popular music and popular sounds, and that's really just one avenue in. And what's exciting to me is that associations like NASM, the National Association for Schools of Music, that do the accreditations for schools across the country, for colleges and universities, they're starting to look at their requirements for universities about making sure that there's a more diverse opportunities for students to get in, because it's that access point into music. And so we can look at that for music teachers and music teacher education, but we also have to look at it, I think is what you were referring to, Marissa, is into our programs. How do we provide that space for kids to get into our programs if it isn't band, choir, and orchestra? And so, it's a challenge, but it also takes, commitment by the music teachers, and you might be out of your comfort zone. I learned how to play guitar because I felt that our school district, I had one guitar class in college, and that was it. And I really saw the need and the interest that kids would like to take guitar, and we should offer guitar in our school. And there was a half-year guitar elective at our junior high school, and I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to figure it out. I will take it on, and I will take the challenge. And I worked with the teachers and talked to friends and took some lessons, and I stayed a step or two ahead of the kids for a while, and some of them certainly played a lot better than I did. But now we have a guitar program, and there's that avenue for kids to come in and be musical in school through guitar. We have a class called Rock, Rap, and Revolution, and it's not a performance-based class, but it's a class where kids can come in and learn about those social justice issues and why the music that they hear today is kind of the way it is. And we frame those really critical and courageous discussions and conversations about the popular vernacular music that they're listening to and what that's all about. And so maybe they don't want to sing in the choir or play in the band, but they're still wanting to know more and be engaged musically in that way. And so I think there's, the sky's kind of the limit. It's just really a matter of back to that cultural relevance, and responsiveness to where are the students at and what kind of music are they interested in making. And it may be that students they love it. I told you I did the survey at the beginning of COVID, and I asked them, what kind of music do you like to play? And I was expecting, marching band stands tunes or pop tunes or maybe Broadway tunes, classic band repertoire. They wanted to play the Holst. They wanted to, do more of that sort of thing. And that kind of surprised me. But at the same time, that's a culture that's within our program here. And that's what they're used to. That's what they know. And I think the other part of this, back to how do we expand beyond that, is trying to open the door to have space for the kids who aren't in our programs and asking them, what do you know? And what are you interested in? And it takes time, and that's tough. We all know we're running 1,000 miles a minute, but it's worth it. It's definitely worth it to take the time to look at who's not there, who's not at the table, who's not in our classes, and trying to figure out the why aren't they there, and do something about it. It's kind of that simple.
Thank you. Sorry, I know that was a very big question.
Sure.
Okay, so to kind of wrap up, if people want to find out more about you or potentially get in touch with you, what's the best way for our listeners to do that?
Sure. The easiest way is email. I try to be as quick as I can to get back to folks. It's just sheehanmusiced@gmail.com. So SHEEHAN, sheehanmusiced@gmail.com. Happy to, talk with folks, spark up conversations, see what else is going on there. So yeah, and really, this is a great podcast, and I think it's great that folks have the opportunity to connect. As I said, it's so big right now. In light of COVID, but even beyond that, it's wonderful to make the connections and just see what's going on out there from other music teachers. I've gotten some great ideas tonight from you guys, so I appreciate you having me on and talking.
No, we appreciate you being here on a later time recording on a Sunday, but we appreciate it, and I think we're all leaving with some things to think about in terms of
Absolutely.
Now I have a handful of things too, so I certainly appreciate it as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I will also link up all of the information in the podcast bio and on the blog on the F-Flat site. So if you guys need to get in touch with Scott, you can do that.